What's up guys, welcome back to another video. As you can see behind me, the GTR has just had its final prime. So if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that all the windows and glass came out. They've all just been masked up. This is the final prime. So in the last video, I would have spoken about how we'd repaired all the body lines and stuff on the wheel arches. How I didn't pull and repaired all these lines and blocked them in. Once it was primed, we blocked these body lines all back in, made them nice and sharp. And now it's at its final prime, we can start prepping for paint. So I want to get it unmasked, move it back a little bit, and we'll have a closer look. So I've just unmasked all the wheels and sills, just to help be able to push it back a bit, but I am going to leave all the windows masked up for now. So because we're going to be prepping for paint, obviously we're going to be blocking, wet rubbing to prep for paint. I want to keep as much dust and stuff out of the inside of the car as I can until we are ready to mask, and then I'll completely unmask it when I have to. So I am going to paint inside my whole boot area, well inside the quarters, etc. So I don't have quarter trims and a boot interior to go back in, and it was the only part of the car that wasn't going to be painted fresh or look like it was touched. So the plan now is, yes, I'm going to paint all inside my boot, all that, and tidy up the wiring as well. But first of all, I want to get started on the engine bay. That's probably the priority. Once the engine bay and boot is prepped, obviously they can get painted, so they're definitely going to get painted before the rest of the car gets painted. So we might as well jump into them and get started. Alright, that's probably most of it roughed out. So obviously you can see where I buzzed over most of it with a whizzer, cut through on a few of the edges. Some things needed feathering out anyway, there was a bit of flaky paint. So that's probably roughed out the most of it. I'm obviously going to have to go around and hand rub a lot of the edges, but we'll do that soon. I was just thinking, I've got a VIN number under here. Obviously it's been painted before, so it's hard to see. Another one up here. So I might put a little bit of paint stripper on them just to get them back to metal, and then I can hand rub that and etch it. This has had a dent in it, I've tapped it up before, so I need to put a little bit of bog in here. And I removed the, I think it was the battery tray clamp or something that goes here. So I need to sort of clean this up and put some filler in that and get that smooth as well. So I might put paint strip on that and get the bog in. While that's drying, I can start hand rubbing everything else. But we are getting there slowly. For some reason the paint stripper wasn't bubbling and reacting, but it did soften the paint, so I've managed to scrape it off. You can sort of see my numbers back in there now. So because the bay's been painted before, the numbers on the strut tower were already a bit hard to see. The one on the firewall you could still see clearly. Painting it again, I think we would have lost the one on the strut tower. I just want to make sure they're there, vehicle identification if I ever need it, or if we get pulled over and I don't know, who knows. But I just wanted to make sure it was clear, and everyone knew exactly what car it was, so that was the main thing. So now that I've got that done, I'm just going to rub this, smooth that out, and then I'll start rubbing all the edges in the bay. We'll get this all finished off. GoPro cut out halfway through, but the bay's all done now. So I whizzed everything that I could, flat surfaces, and then had to hand rub all the little edges, and I've gone around it a few times and I've done all the edges, and I've just put some etch on all the bare metal. So that's all smoothed off now, smoothed off down there. The paint stripper wasn't really working. I'm thinking it was a bit old. I mean, it has been sitting since I did my wheels, but who knows. It did soften the paint a bit, but it just wasn't bubbling up. So I scraped it all off, got a razor blade, dug all the previous paint and stuff out of all the letters and numbers. So that's done now, the bay's done. I'll get Dan to check it during the week, but I'm happy with that. I think for the most part that's done. That's ready for paint. So now I'm going to get started on my boot. So I quickly touched on it before. Basically, the whole car's getting painted anyway. We were going to do the boot aperture, doing all the door apertures inside the doors, inside the guards. I mean, I've Raptor coated underneath. I'm going to Raptor coat all inside my guards for stone chips. Just sort of prepping ahead. And I did feel like the boot was the only area that wasn't really going to be touched. I didn't know quite what to do with it. I don't have a complete boot trim. I said I didn't have a boot trim, but I don't have a complete boot trim. I've got a pretty average condition boot mat. I've got 2 quarter trims, but they've had squares cut out of them to fit the rear strut brace, which I'm not too sort of happy with. So I'm happy not to run the boot interior. I was never going to, that was fine. Because of the size of the wheels that are going back on the car, I'm not going to run a spare. I'm not going to put a spare in the boot. I do like the idea that we can take this car out for breakfast or go for a drive, or if we go meet our friends somewhere, we can take this car for a drive. But I want to be able to fit a couple of bags or some toys or a bike or a pram or something, so we can take Luca with us in the boot. And my idea is to make a false floor to sort of go over it. So this is a template basically of the factory boot carpet. So I popped a post up on Instagram looking for a boot carpet to trace, because mine was in quite poor condition, and a guy I met at a car show reached out and said, yeah man, I'm in Brisbane, I've got one. So he brought it over to work and I traced it out on a piece of cardboard. So I've made this probably a centimetre bigger than the factory carpet, because like I said, I'm not going to have the quarter trims on each side. So I want to transfer this onto some wood. I'm going to sort of cut that out today, and I want to dummy sit that in. I'm just a bit worried about the width. If I make this thing too big, it's not going to fit in. And to secure it, it's going to go under the battery. I might use the rear bolt hole over here, but obviously I can take the factory wheel bolt out as well and put a stud through there if I need to. So doing all that will make the boot nice flat, nice and painted. So that's my plan for that. All the wiring, not that it's rough or dodgy or anything, but if I'm tidying this whole car up and I'm redoing everything, I want to redo the wiring as well. So the factory wiring comes down behind the taillights and then along. For the fuel pumps, obviously it's had a relay and a sort of fuel system, etc. spliced in the batteries here. So my idea will be, for now I'm going to take it all back into the cabin, so we can paint all inside the boot. This will all be smooth, nice, clean, with the false floor. And then I might run the battery sort of along that firewall basically, and have all the wiring up the front of the boot where you can't really see it, and come back around to the battery there. I'll still be able to get to the speakers, and then maybe I can just sort of drop straight in for the fuel pump or come in across the front. So just trying to make it all look neat. I mean, I don't want to say show car, definitely a street car. I'm going to drive the hell out of it, that's my plan anyway. But when I go somewhere, I do want it to look as though thought has been put into the whole car. That is what I'm trying to achieve, trying to make it all look nice, and go from there. So basically for now, I'm going to jump into the boot. For the most part, I've used the whizzer, used the sander, and done as much inside the boot as I can. So I thought I'd be able to sand a lot more with the sander, but obviously I can't. All the different shapes, nooks, crannies, etc. So I quickly buzzed over everything, as you can see, all the sides, the back and stuff, but I'm gonna have to probably drop the coilovers and take out this, which I wanted to do at the last minute. But anyway, I have to take that all out and I'll hand rub all the edges exactly like what I've done at the front. There was a little bit of surface rust and stuff over here. I need to sand it back a bit more, but that is from battery acid because the battery is in the boot. Just goes to show that you should clean it off as soon as you see it. But I can come back to that. I really want to get this sorted and get that finalized and know that it fits and sits before it's all painted. Once this is painted, I don't really want to be taking anything in and out and risk scratching anything. So we'll sit this back in so you can sort of see what it's going to look like. Should have held my mouth right. But that is pretty well how it sits. So that's a little bit wider than factory carpet. I mean, if I bring that sort of back and over, that sits quite nice there. And my plan is to probably fold an inch or so up on each side, just so that if anything slides, it doesn't hit the quarter panel. But I'm quite happy with that fitment sort of up around here. But I could definitely go a little bit wider on this side. So I think right up against that bracket, and then with a nice folded edge along there, and then we could probably definitely go a centimetre wider over here with a inch or so folded bracket on that side. Still quite nice across the beaver. I might come in a little bit and then put a nice straight edge across there with a nice fold, stop things sliding that way as well. Like I said, I'm not too sure. This is just a template, so I might cut this in half, get it back in the boot, tape it all together, and then trace it onto some wood and see if I can get this template made as well. Alright, found another box outside. If I cut responsibly, I might be able to use this to get 2 templates. This being the original, I want to try and maybe keep that as best condition as I can. The shape of this side's good, quite happy with that. I sort of want to go a centimetre wider on that side, so it's probably going to be a little bit too much, and I'm even thinking about flattening off and having a flap with a mount to go into the beaver panel, but I think it's going to be too wide. So I've taken out the back wall of the boot just to try and get it in. I think I'm going to be able to get it in okay. This should be relatively strong with the stud holding it up, mounted on both sides. The MDF board that I've got is 3mm, so it's quite thick. It's 3mm. I'm going to make this out of alloy, so it'll probably be 2mm, so I will have a little bit of bend, but I don't really want to be bending it too much as I'm trying to put it in. So I'm going to make a new template. I'm going to modify this one a bit, and then we'll put it in the car. We'll see how it fits. Alright, happy with the third template, if you will. So I got the original, the one I just made, and now this one. So third template, quite happy. Sitting exactly where I want it the whole way around. And I'll put a 30mm fold on both sides. All going well. I hope I can sort of still get it in and under. I sort of wanted to put a fold here to stop things sliding back into the beaver panel. But if I put a fold here, that's going to strengthen the whole sheet, and I won't be able to slightly curve it as I try and slide it in. So I think this is going to be the final template. Now I'm going to transfer this to MDF, like a piece of board. I'm going to cut this out of wood, and that will be my actual template for when I make this out of alloy. So I'm going to transfer this to wood, sand it all up. Next thing you'll see is that in the car. Final fitment, that is the MDF board. Happy with the fitment. I'll just square up the corners a little bit, and that's where I'll put the fold. So right in the corner there, I'll have that little lip coming up. Same as this side, happy with the fitment around all of this. I'll square this up a little bit, and that'll have the fold as well. I added a little bit to the back against the beaver just to make it sit a bit nicer, and I ended up taking about 2 centimeters off the top of this just to bring it down and try and make it a little bit more flat. The fuel tank bolt is poking through here, so I've just hit that with my hand to put an impression. So I'll drill that and that'll even become a locator. And then I've got the wheel mount under here, which I've just pushed on. Hopefully I can center and find the center of that. But for the meantime, very happy with the way this has turned out. Here we go, all prepped up, all masked up now, front and rear. Dan's about to walk in and put the color down. Super excited to see what the color looks like because I haven't seen the actual color yet. So we'll get this painted and we'll have a first look. And here we are, all painted. Big thanks to Dan. First look at the color, so I'm pretty stoked. Get a good representation of what the color is actually going to look like in the sun. Nice to finally see some color after quite a while. Feel like we're finally getting somewhere, so I'm very stoked with that. And again, thank you so much to Dan and Jesse for all the help. So all the boots painted. I'm going to Raptor coat in the corners like I did under the car, and I've still got to do inside my guards, but for the most part the inner quarters are all painted gloss. So once I make that floor sheet and that's all painted, that can go in, but that'll get painted with the rest of the car and all the other parts. So next step for the GTR moving forward is we'll start prepping this thing for paint, blocking, wet rubbing the whole car, and then obviously pushing it into the booth. But you'll see that very, very soon. This is the end of this video. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.